Hello and welcome back. I am Russell and we are doing the React Foundations course found on nextjs.org. We are on chapter 3. So if you haven't done 1 and 2, I would recommend doing those first. And let's get right into it. Chapter 3 is all about updating UI with JavaScript. And so let's get started. In this chapter, we'll start building out our project by using JavaScript and DOM methods to add an h1 tag to your project. Open your code editor, I prefer VS Code, and create a new index.html file. Inside the index.html file, add the following code. So we're going to follow right along index.html, and we're going to add this code. Now, I'm going to write it because I prefer to actually write out code. I think it's a better way to learn than just copy paste. So I'm going to make an HTML tag, a body tag, and a div tag. And there we go. Then give your div a unique ID so that you can target it later. So let's give it the ID that they have, ID equals app. And I should probably put that inside the quotes. Make sure yours is as well. Okay, then write JavaScript inside your HTML and add a script tag. Okay. So this is outside of the div. We're going to add a script tag. Okay. And then inside of here, we're going to write our type equals text/JavaScript. Okay. Now inside the script tag, you can use a DOM method getElementById to select the div element by its ID. So inside of our script, we're going to open that up and say const app equals document.getElementById. And we're going to select by our ID name here, which is app. Now, you can continue using DOM methods to create a new HTML element. So I'm not going to add the comments here, but they might be helpful for you. So if they are, feel free to do so. So we're going to create a header, const header equals document.createElement. So we're creating a DOM node right here, which is just h1. And this sort of just exists on its own until we append that to some child. Okay, so we've created a DOM node called header, and it's an h1. And then we're going to add some text to it. So if I'm just going to read these comments. So select the div element with the app. We already did that. Then we're going to create a new h1 element. Then we're going to create a new text node for the h1 element. So let's do that now. Const text equals develop dot preview. I should say period because this is a string. Okay. And then we're going to do const header content equals document dot create text node. So we're creating a text node with that text that we just did, right? So we defined a variable called text that holds that string. And now we're creating a text node. And now we're going to do header dot append child header content. Okay, so we're taking our header element that we created and we're appending this text to it. And finally, we have to append this header to our app element, which is, the one that we created up here, this div append child header. So dang, that was a lot of code to write just to put a little text element in an h1 in here, but that's how we do it with the DOM, okay? To make sure it's working, open your HTML file inside your browser of your choice. You should see an h1 tag that says develop, preview, and ship. If you're not using it already, you can use live server. I'm not sure if you have that extension installed, but if you don't, it's a great one to have. It's right here. It's called live server. and you can just click this little button and it should open a new page for you of what you're working in. And there we go. We have our text element, our H1 element in the page. Pretty cool. I can close that one because we have this one open. All right. Pretty cool. So HTML versus the DOM. If you look at the DOM elements inside your browser developer tools, you will notice the DOM includes the H1 element. The DOM on the page is different from the source code. In other words, the original HTML file you created. So what they're saying is if we open this in our tools here, we look at this, we have inside of here our H1, but if we look at the page source, we actually don't have anything inside of here, right? So the code that's coming onto this page doesn't actually include an H1 inside of this div tag, but if we look at the dev tools, we can see it's here. Now, so why is that happening? The DOM on this page is different from the source code. In other words, the original HTML file you created. So here's the DOM, right? We just discussed this. This is what we see, and the source code doesn't have that. So this is because the HTML represents the initial page content, whereas the DOM represents the updated page content, which has changed by the JavaScript code that you wrote. And this is one of the powers of JavaScript, is that we can manipulate the DOM, right? Updating the DOM with plain JavaScript is very powerful, but verbose. In other words, it takes a lot to do that, right? There's like, I don't know, at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code to just add an H1 element in there, okay? You've written all this code to add an H1 element for some text, right? There's just a lot of code in here just for one little piece of text. As the size of an app and your team grows, it can become increasingly challenging to build applications this way. With this approach, developers spend a lot of time writing instructions to tell the computer how it should do things, but wouldn't it be nice if we could describe what we want to show and let the computer figure out how to update the DOM? Yes, that would be nice. I think so. Imperative versus declarative programming. The code above is a good example of imperative programming. You're writing the steps for how the user interface should be updated. But when it comes to building user interfaces, a declarative approach is often preferred because it can speed up the development process. Instead of having to write DOM methods, it would be helpful if developers were able to declare what they want to show, in this case, an H1 tag for some text. In other words, imperative programming is like giving a chef step-by-step instructions on how to make a pizza. Declarative programming is like ordering a pizza without being concerned about the steps it takes to make the pizza. So usually when you go to a pizza shop, you're not like, hey, can you first make the dough using flour and water and eggs, and then knead that dough, and then roll it out, and then put some tomato sauce and then some cheese on it, and then put some pepperoni on top, and then take that and put it in the oven, wait like 10, 15 minutes, bring that out, let it cool a little bit, cut that up, and then give me one of those slices, right? You just say, can I just have a slice of pepperoni, right? So that's what we're trying to do here through declarative programming. So React is a popular declarative library that you can use to build user interfaces. So instead of doing all this, it's allowing us to basically do this with really simple, what looks like H1 tags. And we'll see that in a second. So React, a declarative UI library. So as a developer, you can tell React what you want to happen to the user interface, and React will figure out the steps of how to update the DOM on your behalf. It's really, really powerful to be able to do this. In the next section, we'll explore how you can get started with React. Okay, it's quiz time. Test your knowledge and see what you have learned. So which of the following statements is more declarative? And I basically just did this without even reading it. Knead the dough, roll the dough, tomato sauce, add cheese, add ham, add pineapple, bake at 200 degrees Celsius in a stone oven for ... or Hawaiian pizza, please. I'm going to go with Hawaiian pizza, please, right? I'm just declaring what I want. It's declarative. Correct. Declarative programming allows you to describe what you want to happen rather than the steps to make it happen. If you want some additional resources, you can find them here. And if you're following along, you'll be able to click into these. HTML versus the DOM. Definitely good to understand how that works. When you're working in React, you're going to need to understand the DOM quite a bit. In terms of like what's going on, you don't need to learn all of this stuff actually, which is kind of cool, right? We don't need to know, we don't need to be experts in creating elements and all this, because React is going to handle that for us, and you'll see that in the next video probably. So with that, you've completed chapter 3. Congratulations. You've learned how developers use JavaScript to update UI. In the next video, we're going to get started with React, learn how to add React to your existing project. And I will see you on the next video.